Morning. Welcome to another moment in time that we share our morning meditations. I'm Reverend Dr. William L. Johnson III, and I want to welcome you. As always, we have such a great time with each other as we share in these morning meditations, and this time I don't think will be an exception. As often as we gather and share around these moments of meditation, we often are reminded that life is sometimes very, very difficult, which leads us to the purpose for these meditations. They are intended to be an inspiration and an encouragement to all of us as we journey through life. No matter where we are or whether or not we are in our careers or on our jobs, in the hospital, wherever we are with our families, we are reminded that these meditations are a source of encouragement and inspiration for our days and for our weeks and perhaps, hopefully, for the months and years ahead. And so I am glad to be able to share with you in these moments. And I thank you so much for your support and keep on giving us that feedback. We really do appreciate it. You can send it to us at william.johnson@bjc.org. It is a reminder to us to stay on our P's and Q's because you're listening to these messages. Now, I want to share with you today's message, and I hope that it finds you in the very place where it needs to be. We want to talk about keeping our peace, or as I've titled it, keeping your peace. I have been fascinated about how things can move so quickly in our lives and how easy it can be to be overwhelmed with life. I mean, all of us have 1,000 things to do and 1,000 more to follow up with. We find ourselves trying to take care of our families and every individual in our families. We find ourselves trying to do our jobs, whatever our vocation may be, and we struggle sometimes to make sure that we're dotting I's and crossing T's and finishing out those things in which we've started. We don't want things to be left undone. However, I want to say to you that it is almost impossible with the changing dynamics of our world and all the things that we face daily to not find ourselves feeling at times overwhelmed with those responsibilities that heavily lay on us. And so I want to talk about keeping your peace. And in order to keep our peace, we are reminded often that the more that we engage leaning into things, sometimes it does help us to get a grasp of them. But sometimes the more we take into our lap, the more challenges that we face, the more we find ourselves being overrun and overwhelmed by those circumstances in life. And when we look to our left or to our right or to our friends or to our loved ones or to our classmates or to our colleagues that work with us, we discover that they are overwhelmed too. And what do you do when you're overwhelmed and everyone around you feels overwhelmed? I wanted to title this message, "What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do." But I wanted to reframe it because what I've learned is that as often as a 5 point, 10 point message about what to do when you don't know what to do might sound good, life does not come at us so neatly. So I want to talk about this message coming from a passage of scripture, the 14th chapter of the Gospel of John. And it opens up with these words. And let me give you some context for these words. For those of us who are part of the Christian tradition, we are familiar with this story as we are navigating the passion of Christ. We are aware of all that happened, or many of the things that happened along the way. And on the night he was betrayed, they gathered together for a Passover meal. And he got his disciples together and all those who would be his followers, and they gathered together, and especially those disciples, and they broke bread together. And he shared with them a meal of bread and wine and food. And after eating supper together, he took symbolically elements from the meal, bread, and he broke it. and he reminded them that he would be broken too. Wine, and he passed it around and blessed it and reminded them that the drinking of this wine, in eating of this bread, was a reminder of who he is and what he had done in their lives, almost in some eerie way, preparing them for what was about to happen in a few short hours. But before he finished that, John's gospel, not among the synoptics, but a different take on the story, shares the story and leaves Jesus with talking to his disciples, washing their feet, sharing with them moments of intimacy, and talking with them about the things that were closest to his heart. In much the same way that we would if we were gathered in the room with a loved one, or at the bedside of a loved one, or trying to figure out how to send our children off, or we're leaving to go overseas, or for many who are soldiers, whether they be in whatever branch of the military, who are going off to fight or to prepare to defend the country. Whatever it is, when we are preparing to say goodbye, it leaves us feeling overwhelmed, like things are out of our reach, and sometimes they are out of our control. And that is frustrating. It's frustrating when you can't handle all the things that life has thrown at you. And in the middle of their moments, Jesus takes time to not only pray for them, but also to give them some encouragement. He says to them, let not your heart be troubled, and don't let it be afraid. I've prepared a place for you in my Father's house, and there are many rooms there, and if it weren't so, I would have told you. But don't worry, I've prepared before you, and that's why I'm leaving. In other words, keeping our peace, my friends, is about reminding ourselves in the midst of chaos, trouble, being overwhelmed, that this part of the story is not all that there is, as we've said to you before. But keeping our peace reminds us that in the middle of that, our hearts are not be troubled. That when we look around, we see troubled hearts everywhere. How can your heart not be troubled? Because the one who created you knew very well that the moment of crises, the moment of feeling overwhelmed would come. And because of that, there is a place prepared for us away from the turmoil, away from the stress, away from the worry, and it is a place of peace. I always thought when I read that particular passage of scripture that it only meant that Jesus was going ahead of us to go to heaven so he can prepare a room for us like a mansion and a big house. But the older I get and the more mature I get, the more I realize that the place God prepares is a safe place for us to talk to God, away from the worry, not even going over to heaven as we envision, but creating a safe space for us right here. Keep your peace. My peace I leave with you, God says. My peace I give unto you. Not the kind of peace that the world gives, but I give you peace from me. And then let not your heart be troubled, and don't let it be afraid. I've prepared a place for you to keep your peace. With violence and wars and troubles over here and difficulties over there, it's really hard to see our way through. But I love that God creates a safe space for us to keep our peace. Well, how do you know? Well, my older brother, God rest his soul, we had this wonderful thing that we would do when we were kids. We didn't have a lot, and so the way we would find ways to have fun and entertain ourselves were quite simple and seemingly stupid at the time, but we did it. And from time to time, we had beds, twin beds across from each other. And I would be in my bed and he would be in his. And we finally get a blanket or a sheet, cover over the bed, and sit underneath the two twin beds and find a safe space. And we would pretend that it was the safest fortress in the world. But I found that prayer and time with God is similar to that space, that we are covered in our religious commitments and our relationship with the one who created us, if only we would take time to be with God. So during this season, while you're trying to figure it out, I want you to know that whenever you feel overwhelmed, find a safe space and keep your peace. And how do you do that? Here's how I've done it. I start by recounting all the things, not that went wrong, but everything that went right during the course of the day. I woke up. That was good. I'm breathing. That was even better. My heart is beating. That's even awesome. I found a place to live or a roof over my head. Those are great things. I still have some friends. That's awesome. I have a job that I love. That's magnificent. And when I start counting and enumerating and fingering through all the things that have blessed me, I simply say thank you to God for all that's happened. What I discovered is that those who've gone before, ancestors and old church members from an old church, their voices come back and they remind us to count your many blessings and name them one by one. And you'll discover that the things that look like they're overwhelming pale in comparison to the blessings you've received one day at a time. Now, I realize that doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes life can be so difficult that it shakes us to our very bones. But keep your peace. And even if you're in a moment that's difficult, remember moments in which you've come through difficulty already. And you'll discover that the track record outweighs what's happening even in your present moment. Recall them and use that strength for your now. And you'll discover that when you do that, it has the ability to transform what your next moment will be. Thank you so much. I want you to know that you're loved, you're appreciated, and you're irreplaceable. And even as you're wrestling through life, sometimes some of us are doing that, keep your peace. Don't let anything take that away. Hold on to it with your very life, because you might discover that it is the very thing that sustains you in a stormy, crazy, strange, surreal, violent world, that God knows how to put an umbrella over you and keep you in perfect peace. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. God bless. Thank you so much for your time.